almost 200,000 cattle are killed in a massive snowstorm when snow that appeared like cotton balls got stuck in their nostrils, suffocating them, and the temperature in neighboring states reached 90 degrees. In 2003 and 2017, hundreds of thousands of llamas and alpacas died as a result of anomalous sub-zero Arctic weather in Peru, a country which reaches to the equator. The following year, hail the size of baseballs fell in dozens of areas all over the world, from the USA to Serbia, Australia, South Africa. This hail was so large, it even damaged airline cockpits and forced emergency landings. This bizarre, extreme weather is nature's way of giving an indication that something's very wrong. In addition to those things listed, every day there are severe thunderstorms and blizzards, tornadoes and hurricanes, ice storms, dust storms, heat domes and droughts, water spouts, and even fire tornadoes. For 150 years, scientists have warned that the increasing amount of carbon in the atmosphere is creating a greenhouse effect, increasing temperatures all around the Earth. Yet, what's happening is the opposite. These extreme cold events seem contradictory to the logic. It's no wonder there's so much confusion and distrust and anger about this topic. What exactly is going on? If you look beyond the accepted narrative about the randomness of weather, you'll find the reason why extreme cold weather is happening despite the warming planet, and what you discover may shock you, especially since the proof of what's causing it is right before your eyes. Weather technology that we're told is only being researched for the future is being implemented right now. We're told it's intended to protect us from scorching temperatures and disappearing coastlines, but methods being used are also harming our air, soil, oceans. They are harming all life and causing these freakish storms that are occurring at an ever-increasing rate. And unfortunately, as long as we remain oblivious to it, or deny it, or belittle those who are trying to alert us, the sustainability of life on this planet will remain at the mercy of a very powerful few who are going to dramatic ends to keep the status quo and to convince you that your perception is wrong. At the universe inside you, we're interested in raising consciousness, in waking and empowering humanity. We acknowledge that what you're about to hear is controversial, so we only ask you to take notice. Are you ever being forced to see or hear information that contradicts what you're otherwise seeking? Has it ever been necessary to force the truth about anything? Shouldn't truth need no defense? George Orwell said, "In the time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act." We expose the covert geoengineering that is happening before your eyes, the reasons why it's kept secret, and the horrific impact it's having on us and on our environment. And discover the reasons you may want to join the growing number of people who are seeking to take our power back, to address climate warming with solutions that support life rather than harm it. In his book, The Demon-Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark, Carl Sagan said this: "I have a foreboding of an America in my children's or grandchildren's time, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues, when the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority." If you thought weather control was just science fiction, it's okay, you're not alone. There are reasons it's scarcely mentioned in the media. In case you missed it, here are some recent reports about it that came from China. The lack of discussion about weather modification in the West and Wikipedia's skimpy definition on climate engineering may lead you to think it's all very new technology. Actually, the first rain-making patent was filed over 100 years ago in 1891. And artificial cloud cover patents were filed almost 100 years ago in 1927, along with cloud seeding in 1947, which is the process that climatologists use to create rain. By 1952, headlines like this exonerated our technological success with weather manipulation. Then, in 1962, after President Lyndon Johnson asserted, "He who controls the weather controls the world," the subject seemed to disappear. Naturally, many people were not aware of the use of weather as a weapon of war. So programs like Project Popeye in the 60s went unnoticed. Popeye viciously cloud-seeded Vietnam to worsen their monsoon storms. And Project Nile Blue attempted to affect the sugar industry in Cuba. One atmospheric scientist, Ken Caldera, shared that in a meeting discussing weather warfare, some of the ideas that were considered included creating tidal waves that would destroy a shoreline, or putting pathogens in a cloud. Though it's a little-known topic, the relevance of weather warfare is so important, it's been compared to the power achieved when scientists split the atom. Dane Wigington is a fierce fighter for weather modification transparency, and he says that weather modification is the crown jewel by which countries are destabilized or forced to allow occupation. He adds that a nation can be brought to its knees without even knowing they were at war. Unlike the atomic bomb, however, weather warfare can be deployed in secret, and it will always appear to be caused by Mother Nature. Weather warfare is deceptive and insidious. So it's no wonder the United Nations sought to ban weather warfare beginning in 1977. Consider, however, if you're a military leader, are you willingly going to lay down such a powerful weapon that not only ensures victory, but preserves your country's reputation because it all happens so secretively? In fact, it makes you wonder how many times someone was humiliated for saying something that sounded crazy, when it's clear that we just don't have all the facts. Weather modification includes geoengineering, which is, by definition, the deliberate large-scale manipulation of environmental processes that affect the Earth's climate in an attempt to counteract the effects of global warming. It was decided by a few that the best way to prevent warming was not to change power sources, but to prevent solar radiation from hitting the Earth, a technique called solar radiation management, and a process which mimics the effect of a volcanic eruption. There are a variety of methods that can be used to prevent sun from reaching and heating the Earth, but we just want to focus on one, something called stratospheric aerosol injection by jets. SAI is the supposed potential solution to climate warming, according to its proponents. In its simplest explanation, this US newscast, which aired in 1980, about 40 years ago, discusses how cloud cover by jet trails was helping prevent the heat of solar radiation. So this technique has long been known to be effective. Information like this invites us to trust the process After all, we know that climate change will displace millions of people and has been identified as the single greatest national security threat that we face. But let's look at the SAI strategy from another point of view. What exactly is being used to create this cloud cover? In 2013, we got our answer. The most renowned geoengineering scientist in the United States, David Keith, appeared on the Stephen Colbert Show to promote his book, The Case for Climate Engineering. What was revealed may be the most critical information about covert geoengineering practices than ever admitted to the public. You could actually spray sulfuric acid in the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up. And you tech things. You could spray something into the atmosphere, spray pollution into the atmosphere to stop it warming. How do you do this? You start with a fleet of modified business jet and say 20,000 tons of sulfuric acid into the stratosphere every year, and each year you have to put a little more. And this doesn't, in the long run, mean that you can forget about cutting emissions. We will need to rein in. No, we'll get to it eventually. In the meantime, we're shrouding the earth in sulfuric acid. So people are terrified about talking about this because they're scared that it will prevent us cutting emissions, right? And also that it's sulfuric acid. We put 50 million tons of sulfuric acid in the air now as pollution, and it kills 1 million people a year worldwide. Okay, but it'll be better if we put more in. We're talking about 1% of that. 1% more, we're just killing 10,000 more people. You could do math. What happens to the sulfuric acid after it's sprayed? Does it just stay up there? No, it rains down, but it's a tiny addition of what we're already doing. Is there any possible way this could come back to bite us in the end? It actually turns out to be an old idea. It was known since President Johnson. You ever look at those planes up there? They have contrails behind them. Maybe all those planes have the contrails, maybe they're actually spraying chemicals over the atmosphere right now and Uncle Sam isn't telling us. It seems extremely unlikely. The fact that the United States is not telling something to its citizens, that seems extremely likely to me. I think they might have your idea already. So, this world-renowned climatologist says, if we can just inject a little more sulfuric acid and metal nanoparticulates into the stratosphere, we can effectively reflect the sun's heat, even if it kills tens of thousands of people, so that we can buy time and eventually get around to decreasing our reliance on polluting fossil fuels. If you were given a choice, would you give a thumbs up for willingly adding these toxins to your respiration, soil, food, and water supply? To allow BP, Exxon, Chevron, and the rest to have a few more decades exercising optimal power and profit? We'll tell you more about the effects of those metal nanoparticulates on humans. You may have noticed how the geoengineering proponents emphasize that SAI is being considered for use in the future. We just heard a 40-year-old news clip saying it was working. So why are we continually told it's being researched as a potential solution, when the evidence shows it's happening right now? Propaganda mastermind Joseph Goebbels of the Nazi Party said, "If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all its powers to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state." Research on weather modification goes back well before its public mention in 1980. This document, presented to the US Senate in 1978, reveals that cloud seeding research began in 1947, and with devastating consequences to the environment. But would you believe that the research goes back even further? Medal of Honor recipient Admiral Richard E. Byrd wrote a book called Alone about his experience in the Arctic. No one at the time would have noticed that the book cover shows sky aerosol patterns. This book was published back in 1938, after the First World War, when these technologies were being studied at the poles. It's also worth noting that Byrd had a way of sharing important information with the public through cryptic messages, as we discussed in our video about Inner Earth, which was curiously censored by YouTube. You can expect it to be re-uploaded again soon. By the way, the publisher later changed the image on this cover when it was re-released. That was 80 years ago. So if we believe the common narrative about this technology only being researched for potential use in the future, this means that since the first studies in it began, we've sent spacecraft beyond Pluto, we've cloned life forms, developed artificial intelligence, created supersonic jets, the internet, cell phones, and more, but apparently have had no advancement in our understanding of the effects of cloud seeding and SAI. Is that possible? Kevin Shipp was formerly a decorated CIA officer. In his book, From the Company of Shadows, he reveals the shocking facts about covert climate engineering, including massive aerosol dumps over populations and the electromagnetic energy networks that are designed to manipulate air masses. These weather technologies have been researched and implemented for decades. Seeing how incredibly effective, how complicated, and how harmful these technologies are to life, it's no wonder so little is shared with the public. Also in his book, The Demon-Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark, Carl Sagan said, "One of the saddest lessons of history is this. If we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle's captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back." So let's look at the bamboozle, the so-called contrails. Fog lifts, clouds move and change, but at present, jet trails last for hours and hours in the hot air above you, eventually spreading out to create a thin, cirrus cloud haze. Considering the stratospheric conditions of humidity and temperature, this just doesn't add up. One day they cover the sky, and the next day they disappear, even without any change in weather conditions. In the documentary, What in the World Are They Spraying?, Edward Griffin explains the difference between contrails and SAI, what some people call chemtrails. A word that'll give you a powerful sting if you use it, due to the way it's been labeled a conspiracy. If nothing else, know this: a jet contrail that was pure condensation would not start and stop like this. Also, because they have metal nanoparticulates in them, as Keith and Shipp revealed, jet trails are electromagnetically conductive. On the ground, networks of powerful microwave radio frequency from Nextrad, which is next generation radar networks, can be transmitted to manipulate air mass. When this happens, it will make unnaturally precise geometric patterns of the clouds, directing the metallic nanoparticles sprayed from SAI, the way a magnet directs iron shavings. Up until the 1940s, airplanes didn't leave lingering jet contrails behind them. And of course, scientists keep saying that cloud cover solutions are being researched. Just don't look up. Like David Icke says, the most insidious lie is the one that exists in plain sight. Dane Wigington says, "How big does the climate engineering elephant in the room need to be before it can no longer be hidden in plain sight?" We used to hear that it was time to stop building things with tailpipes and smokestacks. Time to stop using the sky as a waste dump for our carbon dioxide pollution. We knew it for decades, but have been too distracted in our struggles for security and our longing for escape to actually turn it around. Apparently, that intention was thwarted to preserve the status quo and keep the powers that be. Unbeknownst to all of us, hundreds of people working in the shadows have decided, independently of public knowledge or consent, to use powerful technologies to reduce the heating of our planet and assert power over other nations. While the UN does want to create more transparency with this, powerful nations resist. No powerful few are going to bend unless we are united, informed, and unstoppable. We are not powerless to this deception. When something is untrue, we can simply turn the other cheek. But attacking and labeling something as a conspiracy can be a powerful form of propaganda that creates confusion and distrust of the truth. It's an abuse of power and an assault on human dignity. Do we want a healthy planet for our children? If so, we must practice listening and understanding, not just attacking. To really put this matter in perspective, think about when you first learned that burning fossil fuels, coal and oil, emits an excess of carbon, which builds up over time in the Earth's atmosphere like a greenhouse. No matter what age you are, you were likely taught how critical it is for humanity to change our power source to something clean and renewable before the escalating heat endangered our Earth's ecosystems. Well, here's how successful that's been. Sadly, despite decades of goodwill and effort, oil and coal industries are more powerful than they've ever been. Consider, the population is over 7.5 billion people worldwide, and almost every human being depends on them in some way. Climate warming and SAI jet trails are not the hoax. Maybe the only real hoax is government's supposed efforts over the last 100 years to convert to clean energy and detach from the powerful companies that fill their pockets.